Just a quick follow-up on that. Is the typical path to be that you would have to start out working for an agency or some other organization before you could go into your private practice, or is that not necessarily
That's
the
a
case?
great question. The process of graduate school is once you get through school and you become a doctor of psychology, that's the beginning. Then you start. So you get your doctorate, you've done a pre-doctoral internship, right? So before you can even get your degree, you have to go work somewhere for a year. I worked at Sharp Mesa Vista Hospital. And then after you finish that successfully, you get your degree. Yay, you got it. Well then, you need another year postdoctoral training somewhere before you can sit to get your license. So I did my postdoctoral training at Psychiatric Centers of San Diego. The VA has sites, UCSD has sites. There's a lot of different training sites where you can get that hours of training. The highest would be an APA site, but they're very few and far between, so don't hold your breath for one of those. But the VA has great sites. Military actually has some great sites. Great meaning you get a ton of experience in a lot of things, and they pay good while you're doing it, right? At the other end of the spectrum, you've got your doctorate. You can find a therapist and just simply get your hours working under them. So those are different ways you can do it.
Great, thank you. David?
It's just in case, I don't know if you guys are aware of this part, so there's maybe a background that should be here for all of what we're saying, is that there are 4 licenses in the state of California that allow you to be a therapist, to do psychotherapy. One is a psychiatrist, which is an MD. Another is PhD, clinical psychologist. Another is a licensed clinical social worker, which is what Brian have. And the last is a marriage and family therapist license, which is MFT or?
No, I have, it's national licensing. It's called ATR's Registered Board Certified Art Therapist. There's also now the LPCC
right.
that
and
I'm working towards. Yes.
One that's coming is licensed, what's it called? Licensed professional? LPC, licensed professional counselor?
Clinical counselor,
okay.
LPCC.
Okay, and so there's a 5th that's about to become part of California as well. So there's a number of really very viable options, and all of which are really worth looking into for you. Each one has different rights and abilities, and as well as limitations. But they, although it might seem like it's pure hierarchically driven, like every choice that you make, there are limitations that go with each one. And it's important to take the time to really get to know what one fits you best. So it's important to think about that as you go along with this. In terms of my own kind of day-to-day world, I wanted to say that there was an advantage you left out of yours, which is you get a paycheck. That's a huge advantage. Private practice is not all it's cracked up to be at times. It seems like that thing that's the pinnacle thing. But particularly as probably a lot of us who are in private practice have seen over the last 2 or 3 years, it's more of a work-a-day kind of thing than ever. When discretionary income disappears, that's when you have to work harder in a private practice than you can ever imagine. And that's when a lot of people have ended up turning to having a regimented setting where you can work and rely on there being an actual thing. So paperwork or not, let's be clear that there's a time when it's really valuable to have a structured setting where you can rely on using that license or that degree. But knowing that you have one is a really great thing. So you can use it in a lot of settings. And a lot of people, and if you look at the formal traditional models of, it's called the Boulder model for the psychologist, is that you actually would diversify somewhat. So that you might have some of your time set up in using it in a licensed or structured setting, kind of like Brian's doing. Maybe you have part of it in a private practice setting. Maybe you have part of it in some consulting. Maybe you are kind of doing some work in a place where you're a part-time manager for some place. For me, the way I've set mine up for probably way too long now is that I'm a private practitioner. Kind of, as you said, Lisa, there's really not a specific rhyme or reason to any given day. I am the accountant for the business. I am the marketing for the business. I am the clinician. I am the employer. I'm structured as a corporation. I incorporated in 1996. So it's David L. Christopher Psychotherapy Corporation. I have some intellectual property assets that I own. So that's a couple of trademarks. I actually have, that's fingers crossed, a patent as well, because I think that it's important for a business and a corporation to become much more viable. Very few people, unlike an attorney group, attorneys are so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and then they bring in interns who then run the business for them and they continue to make money someday. I don't know of a therapist group that does that, sadly. I've actually approached a number of them over the years, colleagues, and said, why don't we work towards this? Doesn't work. I have not yet to be able to find a group that will do that with me. So most therapists end up fading into the distance somewhere along the line. And that means you need to build other ways to create your business. For me, I've looked towards other things that help me down the line, not as far as I might like, but somewhere down the line, I'll be able to hopefully have some retirement options. And so part of what you need, if you decide to go down the road of private practice like myself, you need to build ancillary things that are going to create a structure for you so that you'll be able to retire. On a day-to-day basis, it is the ultimate in flexibility. I will give you that. It is the coolest thing in the world to know that they're a little bit older now, but when my kids were younger, my daughter, I actually have this little thing I saved that says, I know my daddy loves me because he will reschedule his clients to come to my violin practice and lessons. I love that. That is the trade-off I made in my world, was to be able to be with my kids first, foremost, and always. Figured I could grow old and do other things all the time. But being able to be with my family was my highest priority in the world. Not making $1 bazillion. Not that I was going to make it here anyway, but which you will not. This is not, you can do better, but there are a lot of other careers, you guys, where you can make a hell of a lot more money. And if that's your highest priority in life, do not do this. I'm going to tell you straight out, do not do this. There's a limited number of hours you will have in any week, a limited number of things that you can put yourself into. Whereas you go into some big-time sales, I mean, real estate sales, it goes ups and down, but it always has a big payoff at the end of each sale. There's a bunch of other things. This is something that's a labor of love. You need to know that on the front end. You need to get like an inherent joy in what you do. I got an email today from a client that I had last year. And it was like one of these belated, I've really been meaning to do this, and so today I'm going to tell you. Last year when we worked together, out of the whole time we worked together, there was one particular thing that was a 5-minute thing that we said. And it was you reinforced some things about me not having finished my thesis. I decided to go do it, and you didn't know that I did this, and we stopped our work together. Well, guess what? Just not long ago, I finished it, I completed it, I have my degree now, and along with all the cool things we talked about in relationship work and everything else, I just needed to tell you that you changed my life, and I'm so grateful for what you do. And those come in out of the blue, and they're like an extra, wow, how cool is that? It didn't pay me a thing today, by the way. Didn't fill my checkbook, didn't help out. But if you don't draw satisfaction out of those kinds of things, then you really shouldn't do the job. On the other hand, you have to, like the kind of things that you were talking about, of like the being all over the map, and all of a sudden a client will do this, or they'll come in they'll walk in the door, you've been seeing them alone for 6 months, and all of a sudden they walk in with their big, scary 85-year-old dad that they've been terrified of, and it's this little bitty old guy. But they're still terrified of him, and you kind of go, okay, so this is a different setting, and it is thrilling to get to do. But it is about being flexible. If you are a person who struggles with rigidity, then you probably want to deal with that before you become a licensed therapist. And so your job as a therapist becomes being willing to sit on the other side of the couch. So I don't know whether you guys are graduate level students or whatever. Undergraduate. Okay, undergrad, I guess. Then start to figure out what it's like to be on the other side of the couch. I got to talk at my graduates, when I graduated at my master's level. And one of the things I said is, if you're not comfortable sitting on the other side of the couch, don't do the job. Do it, and do it comfortably, and do it regularly. And that's something that you should find out what that's like. It's one thing to say, I want to go help somebody. Try being vulnerable on the other side and see what it really feels like. And see if you like that, because if you do, then you're more likely to like this one. And it has to be something that you feel passionate about that thing, not just because you're broken, but because you can sit there and get so vulnerable that it's not painful to do. And that's, for me, part of it is about that you don't talk to other people, you don't do therapy with all your friends, for a simple reason, not just because it's illegal, but because you don't want your friends to walk away. With a client, they're supposed to be able to walk away anytime. Your friends, you don't ever want to walk away because you're crossing that line. So you may think that, well, I can talk with friends all the time. No. You don't do that. You do this in your job. and then you close the door and you walk out. And that's what you're supposed to do. This isn't a hobby. This is a profession. And you do it as a professional, not with your friends all the time because you like blabbing. Ideally, you don't do it that way. This is supposed to be a trade, and hopefully you turn it into a trade. And it is one of the greatest crafts you'll ever get. But it's not something you do blabbing at Starbucks just because it's fun. You can do that for free. Go make a bunch of money somewhere else if you want to do that. So I work hard at my trade. I work hard at all the fundamentals of it, and I do it every day, but I do different components of it because I'm in private practice, which is part of what you guys are doing as well. But the other side of it is just as important. If there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and over the course of a long time, you will find lots of different venues to do it in. And that's how you keep it kind of fresh.
All right, so we're going to have a few more questions, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience as well. But I know we spent a lot of time talking about different graduate school programs that prepare you for these careers, but I know as a career advisor here, I often get questions from students about, well, what can I do without going to graduate school? Are there career options available with somebody with a psychology or sociology, human development major? So maybe Brian, I know that you spent a little bit of time out of undergrad before pursuing your master's degree working. So can you talk a little bit about some of the career options that are available with an undergraduate degree?
Yeah, I don't know that there are some. I don't know. When I was in between that state, when I was looking around, it was like childcare, and it was nothing really exciting, and it didn't pay. It was like around minimum wage, at least around the time I was looking. So in terms of direct type work, so I didn't necessarily look at anything. I'm sure with a psychology degree, if you want to do something that's maybe something more a little administrative or something that you could do more with it, and I never looked in that area. So right away I had decided, well, if I'm going to do anything here, and I need to go and get a master's degree. So I'm not really too sure of all the stuff out there, especially these days. Back then there wasn't a lot. I had worked, after I got my bachelor's degree, I'd worked with the developmentally disabled in a socialization and day program. It didn't pay a whole lot, but it was the course I was taking. And then I also worked at a psychiatric hospital in the evening to kind of make it up and get experience, obviously, to go on to my master's. So I really don't feel like I can answer that question that well.
Any other ideas?
Yeah. I mean, I know people who have, in places that I've worked, say, in residential treatment. Does everyone know, when we refer to some of these things, I've realized we're up here talking like you all know what we mean. Does everyone know what a residential treatment facility is?
Just say it.
No? Okay. It's for children and adolescents who, whether it be their own actions or abuse, neglect, what have you, that they end up living at a facility, and they come in all kinds of shapes and forms and configurations, and they're run by the administration, and then there are people who are therapists. I've worked as an art therapist in that environment, and the one thing, say, I would see with someone with a psychology degree might be, when you said childcare, a version of that would be is the people who are working more with the children or adolescents, but not doing therapy, but working with them on, say, behavioral goals or making sure they're not running out of the facility or things like that. So I think that what's available in terms of is fairly limited and relatively low paying. That's just been my experience. I mean that.
I would agree. It's changed a lot of